Good morning, everybody. Thanks very much for joining us here. Super topic, and part of a series that we're running called Data Uncovered, which is, as well as being a sort of series of video interviews and content in Real Asset Insight. This is the first of a series of webinars where we're really going in depth, looking at data, and also, I guess, how you as investors and real estate professionals can really make the most and fulfill the potential of that data. Really pleased to have with me today Martin Betts from NTrust Infotech. And Martin's going to give us a kind of quick presentation just on some of the kind of key thoughts. And then we're going to have Radha also from NTrust will give us a case study, which really helps us get an in-depth idea of that. And then there'll be time for Q&A afterwards. And we welcome, obviously, your questions. If you look on the right-hand side of your screen, you'll be able to put questions in there, and I'll ask those directly to Martin. But Martin, thanks very much for joining us, and over to you now for the presentation.
Thank you, Richard. Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, or good evening, whether you may be in the world. First, introduce myself. My name is Martin Betts. I'm the Vice President for the EMEA region for NTrust Infotech. So, as Richard mentioned, we're going to go look at a case study today of an investment manager who we've been dealing with over the last few months, where they have monthly reporting coming in from numerous different clients, where we will then aggregate and validate, normalize that data. So we're going to show you a brief presentation before I pass over to Radha, who will then guide you through the process in the Remap platform and how we achieve this. The first slide I need to look at is what are we actually achieving with this client. So this client has over 150 properties. They have multiple different asset classes. They have multiple different property managers, where all that data is coming into us. Now, this is just one case study we're going to look at today, but we've got numerous different other case studies, but we're just going to concentrate on this one in particular. So how do we start this process? Well, the first we need to agree is how we work with the customer. Now, we like to be very, very flexible in our approach, use the client's methodologies, maybe rather than ours, because we'll not only be dealing with you, the customer, we'll also be dealing with the third party, whether it be a fund accountant, whether it be a property manager. So we need to ensure that how we evolve the project and how we work through the project is in line with your expectations and not just ours. So what actually happens? So first of all, we set up a central mailbox for all these reports from our client third parties to be delivered into. Now, we're receiving, in this instance, over 150 properties, numerous different files in numerous different formats from numerous different systems. So we'll be getting files from Yardi, MRI, SAP, Argus, JD Edwards, Oracle. The list goes on and on and on. And we're getting those in PDF format, and we're getting those in Excel format. So the first thing we need to do actually is, before we can start dealing with this data, is just do a quality check on the report they've actually sent us. So first of all, can we actually read the report? We have to ensure that it isn't corrupted, so it's something we can actually utilize. But also, have the property manager sent us the correct file? So we're in April at the moment. Have they sent me April's reports, or did they send me January's by mistake? So before we start the aggregation process, we want to ensure that all that data we're receiving is relevant per this month. So once we get this data, we need to turn that into a standard file format. Now, I'm not going to go through this in any real depth, because Radha's going to show you that in far more detail in our Remap platform. So I'm not going to steal his thunder, but I'm just going to give you a quick overview of how we're going to go through the process. So turning those PDFs into Excel is the first thing we need to do, because we want to work from one common file format. We then need to process that data to bring that directly into Remap. So we have a series of scripts that will automate this process, so we can bring that through very quickly and very efficiently. But the scripts that we've developed for this also do need human intervention. So we have our series of data experts ensuring that when we're processing this data, that all of it is coming through in the correct manner and in the correct format. So once we have this data into Remap, we then need to normalize all this data. And it's, for this particular client, is quite significant. So again, what we've done is we've created a number of scripts, in fact, over 50 scripts we've developed to efficiently normalize the data directly into Remap. Now, these scripts are continually developed, they're continually changed to meet with the ongoing demands of all the different data that we're receiving from numerous different clients and in numerous different formats. But again, really importantly, there's a human in the loop here. So we can't automate everything. So artificial intelligence, the scripts, the machine learning can't achieve the ultimate goal on its own. So that's where we have the human in the loop to ensure that what is being normalized is correct and it's something we can work with. Now, once that data is normalized, a crucial element of this process needs to be achieved, and that's the validation of the data that is being sent to us by all those third parties. Because there's no point just delivering this normalized data to the customer when it is potentially incorrect. So we go through a series of different checks on this. So the first thing we actually do is we create a change log. So what the change log does, it looks at the data from last month to the data to this month, and we'll look at any different exceptions going through that data. So where that data has changed, we're going to be notified of that fact. Now, to give you just one simple example of how we actually look at the data and how we potentially change the data. So this month, the rent is €2,000. Last month, the rent was €1,000. So when we've looked at the data coming through, there is no evidence of a rent review. There's no evidence of a rent step or an indexation. There's nothing to show us that this rent should have been uplifted. Now, from then, there's a couple of options you can take. We can just give that to the customer and show all the exceptions, and they can take it up themselves. But what a lot of our customers like us to do is we deal directly with the property manager. So we'll then talk to the property manager and say, okay, look, why is this now 2,000 and not 1,000? Where's the evidence? Now, that could just be that someone's made a mistake from the property manager's side. So they've punched in 2,000 in error. It could be that there was a rent review, but they haven't processed that rent review through their system, so we're not aware of it. So there's lots of different things why data could have changed. So everything we go through in every conversation or any data change is fully audited, it's fully transparent for all the parties to see, and there's full commentary for everyone to see why data is a certain way. But what this also achieves is we're not just giving the accurate data to our end customer. If the data is wrong in the property management system, we're also highlighting that so they can update their systems so it keeps in check. So both parties really benefit from the validation process. So once we go through all the exceptions with all the different agents, that will then be signed off by the agent first to say, yes, we're all approving the data that has come through and has been validated. So once we've gone through that, that then gets delivered to our end customer. Now, that data could go to numerous different systems or just one system. So you may want to send the whole data set, which has been validated each month, to a data lake. So that could be a Snowflake data lake, for example. And that will be delivered directly in the Snowflake file format, directly into a data lake. But what generally happens is it's going to numerous different locations. So it may be going to their property system. So we may be delivering it to Yardi in an ETL format. We may have valuation data that will be delivered to Argus, and we will call their API. But it could be going to multiple locations. So it's not just one file fits all. The data will be delivered automated in the file format of the system where the target location is. So that's kind of pretty much the end of the aggregation process each month. But the last thing is from that is we can automatically push that into the client system, or we can just deliver them the file for them to upload themselves. It's the client's decision. In this case study, what we did was we took historic data into Remap from the client, and we went through a 3-month proof of concept process to make the client feel very comfortable and for them to understand all the processes. But what it also achieves is it ensures that the scripts we're using are correct and they are working correctly. So if we need to change those, we can change those. It also gives the client the assurance that we can speak directly with their third parties with confidence. So once we went through that 3-month proof of concept, we flicked the switch, we went live, and now we're achieving that process for 150 properties in 5 working days, from when we first receive the file to when we deliver that data. This process used to take the client weeks, if not months, every month. And what we see when we audit people's systems, and we do a lot of data audits with systems, is that clients are often using 3 to 6 month old data for their management reporting because this process is taking so long. This alleviates that problem and allows the client to actually report on the data that is relevant today and the data that is accurate today. So I'm now going to pass you over to Radha, who will take you through the process within Remap so you can see that in more of a live environment.
Hello everyone, my name is Radha Krishnaraj, Product Manager for Remap. Remap has been used for the past 10 years and we continuously ship new versions of this product with new features periodically. I've been in the technology field for 25 plus years. Happy to demonstrate Remap today. So let's look at how Remap basically helps you to accumulate data or consolidate data that is received from your property managers, be it your rent roll data or financial data. If you want to accumulate it and consolidate it in a consistent manner or period from period, this is the use case that we're going to look at today. So if you look at my screen, on the left panel is what we call the workflow, which basically guides the data accumulation process. So there are 4 major steps. One is the document submission stage. Second is the data ingestion. Third is the variance analysis to see month over month if there's any variance between the previous data set and the current data sets that's important. Then finally, data consolidation. So we're going to go through all these 4 steps. So if we expand the first step, you can look at there are sub-steps within this particular workflow. So basically what happens is once your property manager uploads those reports for a particular property into Remap, this is done by basically providing an email box for this particular project. So once they email their statements, it automatically lands in the received property management reports bucket, right? So what happens at this point is the system analyzes the statements or the reports that are provided, which might be in PDF or Excel, and then determines if the set of reports that has come in is come from a new property or it's already a property that we have been set up in Remap and we are receiving those documents. So it either moves to the new property bucket, or let's say if in the report there are some incomplete pages or there are incomplete reports that have been provided, it automatically moves to the incomplete reports bucket. So this way, people who need to be alerted if something goes wrong will automatically get an email alert who are associated with that bucket to tell them the report that you submitted is incomplete and that they need to provide the full set of reports that they usually provide into Remap. On top of it, the human in the loop also does a document quality check to ensure all the data that needs to be received from a particular property is received. And if there are any missing information or any clarification that needs to be asked, it gets moved to the clarification required bucket. So here what happens is if I open up the status history, you can look at what is the clarification that is being asked. Basically, each and every workflow step is tracked within Remap. So in this case, for example, the quality check might be in prior month's rent roll file had multiple charges, and in this month it has only base rent. So typically, if month over month you have been receiving your rent roll with multiple charges, and in this case the statement comes back only with base rent, then that is tagged. it's moved to the clarification required bucket, so the property manager automatically gets an email alert, can respond back to this query, and then so that it can move down the pipeline, right? So these document submission stages, basically what it does is it ensures the statements that are received are in line with what has been set up within Remap, and the property statements that are being sent are basically complete for them to move on to the second major step, which is the data ingestion. So if you open up the data ingestion, this is where basically these set of steps are done. First step is basically, if let's say if you have an Excel file that is coming in or a PDF file that's coming in, that needs to be converted into the acceptable format within Remap. What I mean by acceptable format is within each project for a property, we basically decide what is the standardized format this data is going to be accumulated over a period of time, right? For example, let's say if you have 100 properties, each of these properties might be providing in different formats. We want to consolidate and normalize them into a standard format so that data can be aggregated period over period, right? So for that, what we do is we also maintain a master to see what are all the different formats of reports that can come into this particular project. So if I go to the master data section, you can look at, we basically maintain from each and every property what target system this property statements or the rental statements are going to be coming in what format is it going to be coming in, and we associate a format number for that. This is basically for Remap to understand if it comes in format number 16, it needs to apply this logic and transform that particular data into the normalized format that is established within Remap. And if you notice, even from the same property management system, you might have different formats of reports that might be coming in. So in this case, if you notice, even if it's from MRI, you can have a format number 16, a format number 41, or 101. All of this is basically defined within Excel and ensured that each and every report that's going to come into Remap is associated with a particular format number so that it can be read and automatically ingested into Remap into the normalized format, right? So going back to the home screen, you'll notice, so the first step is basically if the PDF, the ready for conversion step basically looks at the statement that's coming in, looks at if it's a PDF file, it first gets converted to the Excel format so that it can be imported into Remap. Once that is done, it's moved to the ready for processing stage. So this is when the data that is submitted from the property manager is going to be moved into Remap. So that particular month statement will get moved into Remap. So to do that, you basically, it gets moved to the do normalize stage. So how we basically move that is you select on that particular record and click on the workflow, and we're going to move it to the do normalize stage. So once I click the save button, what the system will do is it'll look at the particular format of that reports that was submitted, then it'll automatically import the data into the system. Once the do normalize function is done, it'll get moved into the ready for variance analysis bucket. Right now, it's still in the process. Once this step is completed, it'll move into the ready for variance analysis, in which case all the data that is come into that statement is imported into Remap. And then the system also creates a variance report, which compares the current month's data with the prior month's data. So let's look at how that report looks by the time this process gets completed in Remap. So here's an example of a variance file that gets generated in Remap, where you can, in the summary sheet, it tells you comparing the April month's rent roll with the March month's rent roll. Is there any changes in the tenant details? Like, is there, okay, in the tenant details, there's one lease date, start date changes there. On the charges front, there's one new charges and 7 charges have changed. So this helps to keep tab of the data that is coming in, to compare period over period to see if any variances that are there, and also ensure that variances are in line, or if something, if there's a big drastic change in the variance, then people can be alerted to look at to see if these are okay before they get pushed into your data repository. So for example, if 7 charges are fine, the backup is also provided. You'll see there are additional sheets out here. So if I go into the charge details, you can notice there are changes in the for the base rent or parking, whatever the charge code is available, what is the previous month value, what is the current month value, what is the difference? And you'll notice there are changes for these 7 records, and there's also a new charge that is coming for a particular for the particular property, where there's a new charge of $5,000 that's coming in this particular statement. So this way, the variance report gives you visibility on month over month if any changes are there, if all the changes are in line, so that you get a clean and consistent data that gets accumulated over a period of time. Right. So now let's go back into Remap. Let me refresh this screen to see if the workflow is moved from do normalize. So you'll notice the record is moved from do normalize, and earlier the ready for variance analysis were 5 records. Now it got increased by 6. So this is how the Remap basically uses both automation and human in the loop to ensure the data that is coming month over month gets imported into Remap in a consistent format. When we say consistent format, if I dig deep into this particular rent roll record for a particular property, you'll notice this is the normalized format that we are going to maintain in Remap. Again, based from client to client, the structure of how your data needs to be accommodated can be configured within Remap. Here is an example just in case for charges, if you want to accumulate from period over period, what are the data points that you can accumulate is also configurable. So this way, even if the format of the reports are different from each of your property managers, these can all be consistently normalized and captured into Remap in a single format so that it becomes easy for further analysis and your data consolidation and the accumulation of data as a consistent format, even though there are different formats of data that is coming into from your property managers. Right. So let's go back to the home screen. So once the variance is done, like I mentioned, the human in the loop checks the variances to see if there are any drastic changes. If that is the case, then it gets moved to the client review bucket so that the client can review it and acknowledge if that is right, or if they say that data was bad, then we can ensure that data is not basically uploaded into your accumulated data set. So this project is basically used to process the data on a month-to-month basis, and then once all the process related to data ingestion and variance analysis is all fine, then the data consolidation process begins. So this is where we can move this to either a project within Remap where all your months of data that comes in gets accumulated and consolidated, or it can be even pushed to your data warehouse where you can, period over period, you can accumulate all of this data that is being pushed in Remap in a consistent, clean format for you to do further analysis. Right. So these are, if you look at it, are the major steps in the data accumulation process, which helps you to consistently and have a clean data set period over period of data that can be accumulated on your database. And finally, once that is done, we can also have analytics whereby information can be seen like inflow metrics of how much properties are active month over month compared to November to December to January. And similarly, what is the rent roll status? We can keep track of how many properties have sent in the statements, how many properties have not sent in their statements, so that those property managers can be followed up and those statements can be brought into Remap. You can also open up a specific month to see how many statements were received for that particular month. So totally 164 was received. So 51 property managers have not sent in those rent roll statements to be accommodated into Remap. So this way, this can be also a scheduled report that can go to those property managers saying, hey, we have not received the rent roll for so and so months, so that there's an automatic follow-up process from Remap related to the property managers who need to submit their rent roll reports, right? Similar to rent roll reports, the financial data also can be aggregated. So if you look at the specific projects, the workflows is pretty similar to what we saw in the rent roll process. You have the document submission stage, your data ingestion stage, your variance analysis stage, whereby variance between the current period and the prior period is can be reviewed. And if you look at in a financial aggregation project, you can look at the type of data that is being analyzed. So let me go into the set of documents that are provided. And in this case, you can look at there's an income statement analysis report that is provided, right? Similarly, in case there's a balance sheet information that you want to accumulate over a period of time, then you can look at that information also in this. Let me pull up this example to see if there's any balance sheet variance analysis. Okay, not in this one. So let me go back and see if there's one available in the review variance bucket. So if I go into this set of documents that are available in this tab, you'll notice there's an income statement variance and a balance sheet variance. So if I open up this file, you can see the difference that is shown, opening up the balance sheet variance report. So here, if you can see, I'd list down the GL code, what is the GL description, what is the ending balance and the beginning balance. And if the net change, if the variance is high, then the human in the loop can put some appropriate comments for why the variance is there related to that specific GL code. So if you look at the tolerance column, so we have a provision remap. So for every GL code, we can define what is your tolerance level. So that way, month over month, if there's a variance, we can mark certain variances as low and certain variances are high, so that all the high variances can be looked at and proper comments can be provided to determine if these variances is in line with what the data has been provided, or if there's a discrepancy, appropriate action can be taken on your side, right? Similarly, if I pull up the income statement variance, here is an example of an income statement variance that can be shown from within Remap. Here also, you can see there's a GL code, what is the GL description, what is the current period value, last period value, year-to-date current period, year-to-date last period. And in cases where the variance is high, like in this case where there's a 398% difference between the current period and last period, then the human in the loop can look at it and provide comments to ensure that these variances are in line, and this can be sent to the client review bucket for you to take further action. So this way, Remap basically helps you to keep track of your data accumulation period over period and have a consistent process to be followed, which helps you to have a clean and consistent data for doing further analysis. I hope you enjoyed this presentation. Happy to answer questions. Thank you.
Great, thanks very much, Radha. And I know that there's a substantial time difference, and so appreciate that. And we're going to try and pick up any questions that we've got now between myself and Martin. Obviously, do put those questions in the chat, and we will try to pick them up. Just the amount of complexity there, I think, Martin, is obvious to see. But what might be interesting is just to pick up on, there's a lot of focus there around investors and existing assets and portfolios. But let's say, for example, I'm acquiring a new portfolio, but I don't have that data yet. Is that something that you would be able to deal with? What's the situation there?
Yeah, thanks, Richard. It's a good question. The answer is yes. I mean, funny enough, we've actually just completed an exercise with a client in London recently. So what happens in that scenario? So where you're taking over a mandate, or you've acquired a new property, we effectively take all that data from the seller or to the previous investment manager. That data will be brought into the Remap platform as that initial one-off, and would be taking as much historic information again as you would require. But the next step is quite important. So obviously we'll validate that data just like we would with the aggregation month on month. But from there, for the investment manager to then instruct their agents, we will take the sub portion of all that data to be given to the individual agent to then manage it moving forward. So if that's going to go into their ongoing MRI system, the ongoing Yardi system to manage their portfolio, we'll upload directly into their systems with a full validated data set. So the property manager from day one of operation can actually manage those properties effectively and then send those reports month upon month to the investment manager moving forward.
And I suppose just from that kind of sense, how does due diligence and things like that play into that? Because obviously that's a key part of any new acquisition, for example.
Yeah, I think the due diligence part, again, is quite important because with due diligence, you need data to make those business decisions. So in a way, it's very, very similar. So again, we work with a number of investors and help them with their due diligence. So the process for that with a number of our customers is when they're looking to potentially acquire a property, what they will ask us will say, okay, we need the data from the seller. And so that will be in numerous different elements of data. So often we'll be asked to do a complete lease abstraction to ensure that we've got all the data from the leases, not just the data that the seller is going to give them. They want to ensure that it's complete. We'll do a service charge reconciliation as well to ensure that are they over recovering or are they under recovering? Because that could again potentially affect the sales price. We'll take income statements, rent rolls, and from that's going to get sent to their modeling system. So they're using an Argus as an example. We'll send that directly to an Argus system so they can model. And then our involvement hasn't ended then, but the buyer is then going to go through their own internal processes to ensure that is it a good buy or not a good buy. But if it is a good buy and they acquire the property, the data's ready, it's already there. So again, the same process goes in if we're taking data from an initial client, it goes into their systems directly and they're utilizing it from day one.
And I guess just in terms of the property managers, I suppose, do they have to use a particular report template? Is there anything specific that they have to do in essence in order to be able to fit with what you're doing there?
Okay, that's a really interesting question actually, and I'd be interested to ask that question because we've seen examples where you have the agents do get forced to try and utilize a format that the potential investors ask them to use. And that just creates problems. So what we're saying is, no, they don't have to have any particular format at all. We want to utilize what they have. So we're not asking the agent to change anything. They're going to utilize their systems in the way they're used to utilizing them. They're going to send us the reports in a format that they want sent in. Then we'll take over that problem for the end investor. So no, we have seen that in a lot of occasions. It does cause confusion between the investor and the agent. We want to take that away. There's no special format at all.
Okay, interesting. And does that have a potential impact, I suppose, in terms of either your ability to then aggregate this data or the usage case for them? How does that impact what they're doing in a way?
Well, it actually it doesn't really create an impact because what's happening, I think previously, agents will get impacted when they get asked for these certain style reports, but we're just going to ask to do their ongoing daily management. We're not going to ask them to do anything else. So it's an interesting one actually, because I've seen massive impacts when you ask them to do something different. We're actually not asking to do anything different, but the impact they'll have is hopefully they'll see that their accuracy in their systems will improve because we're picking out those problems month on month because people make mistakes. But by changing the way they do want to work, then that gives a massive impact because you're asking them to do something they're uncomfortable with. We're not asking that. Carry on your daily lives.
And I suppose in terms of, you mentioned there that you're working with a number of different partners, different systems. I guess, how does that work? And is that equally a choice for the property manager and the investor in terms of how you are then working with them?
Yeah, so we're not asking anyone to use any systems they don't want to use. So there's no replacement in systems at all. So if, for example, the clients we have and they've got 15 agents and they're all using different systems, so we've got 15 different systems, no, it's no problem at all. I think the one thing that can impact down the line previously if their system gets upgraded, for example. So the report template that's coming through has changed. Now that would have a huge impact moving forward historically, but if it does change, then the process that Radha just explained, we can take on that, redevelop that script, and that happens very, very quickly. So the data gets ingested in that different format, and then we can utilize that format moving forward. So it does allow the agents to keep their systems as up to date as possible. It does allow the investors choice as well. So they can enforce the system on their agents if they see fit. That's not a problem. Or they don't have to disrupt them at all, and they can use what they like.
And I suppose in terms of, if we're looking at data, is this really only lease and financial data? I guess what kind of data are you coming through? Is it restricted? Is it, I suppose, what are you dealing with there, Martin?
Okay, yes, again, a good question. So yeah, the vast majority will be property lease and financial data. That's the vast majority of what the clients are utilising this for. But we do also have other examples of data. So we get a number of valuation data coming through and all the data that surrounds that valuation. We also utilise ESG data coming through. So we do have clients that request that we kind of deal with data coming in from an ESG basis moving forward. And we also have clients that extend their data sets to more of a facility management style because they actually want the detail from that coming through. So they're looking very much at costs and have that granularity in costs and the fixed assets themselves. So it does vary. It does vary. I'll be very honest with you, the vast majority is property unit lease and all the GL data. But we do have the clients that granularity in their subledgers, valuation, ESG, and the FM data as well.
Right, and in terms of for the investor, let's say, we're talking here about how they're harnessing the full potential of their data, Martin. So I guess in what ways is this helping them? In what ways can it help them further? I suppose, what are the kind of things that investors should be looking at, should be doing?
Well, I think to kind of look at that in pieces. So how does it help them? I think there's a few things that will help them with that. One is the time and efficiency it takes. So I think I mentioned at the start, at the moment, so that case study I talked about, that was taking them weeks, if not months, to actually deal with that. So that problem is being taken away. What you have to remember is we're not supplying a product. This is not a product we're looking to supply. It's a service to take that problem away from the investor, because we all know data projects can be a pain. So let's take that problem away first of all. So that creates efficiency for them. I believe it will reduce costs for them because they don't have to employ lots of data analysts to go through this process. So efficiency and cost, I believe it will provide them that. Really, really importantly though, is the data they're going to be utilizing, they know is real and they know is accurate because it's been confirmed by them, by us, and by the property manager that this is now correct, where it was incorrect. So making those decisions is going to be far easier, and they're going to be better decisions because they can trust the data that they're utilizing. And if they do have historic data where they do believe they have a problem, and they don't want to go for a whole lease abstraction to get it completely up to date. What this will also do is month on month cleanse the data even further. So it's not a one hit. It's all magic. It's a series of events that will save them time. It will save them money. It will make business decisions better, and they're actually going to improve their data moving forward. And also, they're not disrupting anything at all. They're not disrupting their property manager. They're not disrupting their fund accountants. Everyone's keeping the status quo.
And you mentioned briefly there about, in your earlier response, about the ESG side. I guess everybody's seeing an increase in ESG reporting, the necessity for that. Is that an increased demand, I suppose, that you're seeing from investors especially?
Now, ESG is a massive subject, and what we're not saying, we're not an ESG provider. What we do with ESG data is purely we're collecting the data, we're validating that data, aggregating that data. We're not pretending to be one of those ESG systems. We're effectively collecting data and turning it into a format that they can utilize moving forward. There's specialist ESG systems out there. We don't pretend to be one of those. We're just going to facilitate that data so the ESG system can use it more effectively. But where we get asked to help with that, and we have seen an increase, is that when people are doing their ESG reporting, they're asked to collect that data so they can actually publish their ESG report in a far more efficient way. So there is an increased demand, but I don't want us to kind of sound like we're the ESG silver bullet. We're looking for data aggregation and validation.
No, that's interesting. And there's obviously, just in terms of kind of trends, buzzwords at the moment, everybody's talking about AI, and I know we'll talk about that in more detail in a separate event. But I just wanted to pick up with you on that. How relevant is that to this? What should investors be thinking about that? And I suppose, how are you beginning to use that within your systems and your data tech?
Yeah, so AI is a part of this. It's we've developed AI over a number of years now and utilized it in lease abstraction, in data validation and collection. So it is a significant part of this, and it will carry on to be a significant part of this as well. So what the AI gives us, it does allow efficiency. So the speed in which we can get that data through the process is vastly improved by our AI. But what the AI also gives, it gives us the ability to effectively interrogate that data very, very quickly, whereas we don't have to kind of search through lots of information. The AI that we have allows us to quickly get the answer that we need if we need answers to questions regarding that data. So it's quite a big part of what we do, but it's just a part of what we do. So we're not developing AI outside of our data collection and data interrogation. That's what our AI will stay. You've obviously now got lots of AI in buildings and all the process that can improve. But this will continue to form a massive part of what we do, and we will continue to develop it. Over the last year, we've seen huge increase in development of AI within our own organization, and we're seeing the results for our clients where they can get data quickly and answers quickly. That's the key message. You get instant responses through AI, which would take you minutes, if not hours, to get it previously.
That's really interesting. And just a reminder that if you want to put a question into the chat, please do so now. And we'll try to answer that, because I've just got a couple of kind of final questions around that. It'd be interesting just to drill down into the AI side a little bit there, Martin, with, I suppose you mentioned there that it's a rapid response, but that it's not a silver bullet for sure in terms of those areas. I suppose, how are your clients using it at the moment? How do you expect it to be used going forward? I mean, it'd be interesting to get your sense, I suppose, of just how you see that if we're looking a year ahead, for example. Do you see an exponential growth in that part of the service?
Yeah, so the RAA started with lease abstraction, and that's been developed quite substantially over the years, where the AI with our lease abstraction now picks up 90% of all the data. We still need the human in the loop. But where we've seen a significant increase in the use of AI is very much revolved around the Chat GPT. So we've developed another piece of AI within our leases where you can just ask plain English questions. So now we're seeing property managers and asset managers really take it on board, where they because we've gone through maybe a lease abstraction or lease annotation process with them, and that can be quite a quick turnaround as well, is that we're seeing people want to ask questions of their data more and more. So it's like it's not pushed to one side. So we're getting a lot of interrogation into the in-depth of leases, and we're tracking those. So we're seeing what questions people are asking of their leases, because it helps us improve our AI as well to capture that data. And where they're asking these questions is the in-depth elements of leases. So I've probably said 1,000 times in the past, is those key clauses, which often get forgotten when people abstract leases, or systems struggle to actually have the multiple data points so people can report on it. So that's where we're seeing a massive uptake, where people want to get into the bones of a lease and understand the legalities of what their commitments are and their actually potential risks are as well. So we're seeing questions galore, every day, where people are asking those questions.
And
so we believe that must be a problem.
Yeah, and I guess just for people to understand, how much of a difference does that make in terms of, I guess, time and efficiency? Because you mentioned time and efficiency being a key element of this in terms of a benefit for investors. So I guess, how much time does that save, and how much time will that GPT chat element save, do you think?
Yeah, so I've actually with a client last week, and they've taken on board, we call it Lease AI. So the biggest benefit they found is that when they're getting calls about from their tenants saying, oh, can I do X, can I do Y, which before that would take them a long time, they have an instant answer. Can they just go and say, oh, can I have a pet? Let's say it's a residential lease. Can I have a pet? Can I have a pet? You can have a small dog or a small cat. So it's instant answer. So actually their help desk or their call centers are seeing a massive improvement in this, because they can actually turn around questions instantly rather than have them logged and they have to get back to the tenant in a few days or a few hours time. So that's we're seeing help desk, call centers having a massive uptake and massive efficiency gains just on that.
So that's really interesting. So it's actually then beginning to help not just the financial side of it, but also that customer service side in a way, which is an interesting one that I hadn't really considered.
Yeah, it's just getting to. I think the whole process of the data is getting to information quickly and knowing that what you're getting to quickly is actually correct. And it kind of goes back to what we've been speaking about all morning. It's getting to the information quickly and knowing it's there and knowing it's correct. Yeah.
Great. Really interesting to pick up on some of these detailed points with you, Martin. A huge topic, I think, and one that particularly investors, asset managers, property managers would be looking at increasingly. And I think just how AI is going to come in, speed up some of those answers. And then just the key area that you mentioned there around the importance of actually having data correct and as early as possible, I think is really interesting in terms of how we move forward with this, also as an investment industry going forward. Thanks very much to everybody for joining us. It's been really an interesting conversation. I hope it's been valuable for you as well. Thanks to Radha for the presentation there around a case study that I think is really useful, certainly one that I hadn't seen before. If you're joining this live, thank you very much for joining, and look forward to seeing the next one. And if you're joining this on demand, thank you very much for watching. Thanks very much, everybody.
Thank you.